Welcome to the lesson for Tuesday. We're talking about graphing, very similar to yesterday's lesson, only we're going to be graphing using key points. Now we are going to use a table a little bit, and I can show you an alternative for that today as well, but we're focused on using key points to graph these. So there are crucial points that represent things in these equations that mean something, that are going to be crucial for us to find instead of you just finding 5 random points in the table. Now finding points in the table is important, but these key points are more important. So what we're going to look at then is a similar example to yesterday. Mr. Scott launching a rocket. This is the equation that we're working with today, slightly different from the ones yesterday. And once again, t is like x and h is like y. So we're going to start by graphing these. So I'm going to graph this. Let me pull up my calculator here. I'm going to graph this, and you can see that I have the equation entered in. Ignore all the other ones. I'm just looking at the blue one, y1. Now I'm going to graph this, and I don't quite see the image. And on the notes here, I have the window settings that I would prefer you to use. It doesn't have to be exactly this, but I'm going to go from -5 to 10 on the x scale and -30 to 150 on the y scale. So if you're entering those in, pause this, get those entered in, and then continue on. And when I graph this, I can see the whole function. I can see the top, the vertex, all that. So I'm looking for points here, and those points are crucial points in this function. So over here, and you can see it, it's in red over here, I have a high point called the vertex, and anytime it crosses an axis is a key point as well. So we're going to get 2 x-intercepts and a y-intercept. And those are the key points that we're looking for. And we're going to do all this on the calculator. And I have it laid out step by step here in the notes. But we're going to take the G-solve button, and we're going to first find a key point called the x-intercept. So I'm going to hit G-solve, and we hit F1 root. The word root is another word for an x-intercept. And we're going to find those 2 points. And you can see on my calculator, -0.458, 0. And if I hit the right arrow, it'll bring me over to the other side, the 5.485, or 458. So these 2 are my x-intercepts. Okay? What do those x-intercepts mean? What do they represent in a problem? And as we talk about what those represent, we're thinking about what that means in terms of like the rocket going up, coming back down, all that stuff. Because they actually represent crucial parts of the path of the rocket. Now, second key point, I'm going to look at the vertex. And we did this yesterday, G-solve max or min. In this case, it's a max. And when you hit G-solve max, it's going to give you this key point, 2.5, 140. Okay, it's another crucial point. I also want the y-intercept. Y-intercept should be easy from this format because it's kind of in the equation. But our calculator will find it. G-solve F4. And that will give you the y-intercept 0, 40. And you'll note 40 is the last number in the equation. So when it's in that standard form that we have this one in, it's always going to be that last number. Not for every format, but for this particular format, it works. So now I have 4 key points. What do those mean? The x-intercept, where it hits right here. What does that x-intercept mean? The x-intercept means that the rocket has gone up, hit its highest point, and come back down. So it's the number of seconds it takes for the rocket to hit the ground. And we can clearly see that displayed in our graph. This is why you have to be precise and label the points and use numbers when you're graphing. And then we look at the vertex. What does the vertex mean? As I said a moment ago, it goes up, reaches its highest point. So that means this point represents that it will reach its highest point after 2.5 seconds. It will be 140 feet in the air. and that's its highest point before it starts to come back down because gravity has pulled on it. So it goes up, gravity pulls on it, slows it down, hits the highest point, gravity starts pulling it down, and then it speeds up more. That's why the sides of the parabola start to get steeper. The sides of the parabola are not as steep up top here as they are as farther down because gravity is grabbing it and the rocket's moving faster. That's great. Those 4 points give me a very clear picture, but we do want to see the full picture of the graph. So besides using those 4 points, we're going to use some more points in a table. And you can do that in the table app, or you can do that using another feature of the calculator called trace. I'm going to show that here in just a moment. I decided to use 2, 3, and 5. But the key is we would really like to provide some symmetry. So we want to use values that are equidistant from the center. So let's see what that looks like. Here's the 4 points right here in this graph. I can see those 4 points clearly labeled. But I want to get some additional points. So I might use 2 and 3 because the center is at 2.5. So 2 and 3 are equidistant from that. And I also already have 0 here, so it'd be nice to get the point that matches 0 that's equidistant from 0. And that would clearly be 5. Again, my center's at 2.5. And then we're going to type these in the table app. So go to your table app, type them in, see what you come up with. Or, if you want to do it from the graph, you can use Shift F1 and do a trace. I'm going to show that on the calculator. If I press Shift F1, I can trace. And I can arrow back and forth, but the nice feature of trace is you can type a number in, like 2. Hit Execute, and it'll take you right to that point. Now I know that this is 136. If I do that again under trace, and I type in 3, Execute, it will show me the value for 3 and the value for 5. So inside this trace feature, you can type in whatever number you want and it'll bring you right to that number. There's 5, 40. I could do -1. It's down at -56 off my screen, and you can jump right to those points. So it's kind of like using a table in the table app, but it's all done inside the graph app. So it's up to you which feature you use, the table app or the trace feature. Now you can see my final table here. It's my 4 key points, not bolded, and then the 3 additional points I just found that are bolded. And then we're going to graph this. So let's go ahead and make our graph. Let me zoom out a little bit so I can see it. I need to get up to 140, so obviously, I'm not going to go by, even 10s won't get me there. I'm going to go by 15s. So that's 30, 45, 60. 75, 90, every 2 is 30. 135, and so 140 would be just past that. On the x-axis, I don't need to go very far, so I'm just going to stay by 1s. And I have the grid marks here, so I don't need to necessarily label that. It wouldn't be a bad idea to label a couple just so it's clear you're going by 1s. Okay. So let's label each of these. So I have the 1 point, the x-intercept. It's real small. Okay, sorry, thing jumped on me there. It's jumping around. Okay, so the x-intercept right here. And then I'm going to label my y-intercept at 0, 40. That's going to fall right here. And then 2, 136. 2.5, 140, and 3 is at 136 as well, and 5 is also at 40, and you can see the symmetry here because this is the center. So if I drew an imaginary line, it's called the axis of symmetry, an imaginary line down the center of the graph lined up with this vertex, you could see it's equidistant. The points are equidistant from that center. And I draw my line here. It's hard to draw the lines on here. Coming down through, and I'm going to hit that last point about 5.5, the other x-intercept. And now I have a clear image. So we have 5.5 here, -0.5 here. I have 0, 40 here. and then especially labeling. Now I don't need to see, as we get more points, I don't need to see every single point. The key points need to be labeled, but if you don't label some of the other ones, I mean this one's easy to label, that's okay. I have them in the chart so I can see those numbers up here in the chart even though I don't have them labeled. Okay? That's it. Go ahead and start your homework. If you have questions, go back into the live session and please ask.